Hey guys, welcome back. So now we're getting into Tales from the Dark Multiverse, Batman Hush. And it is a crazy tale, so let's get into it. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week. And don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squad up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so jumping in, we get a bit of a setup / reintroduction to the Dark Multiverse from Tempest Fusionite, which is the usual setup because he's the narrator for Tales from the Dark Multiverse. But for whatever reason, I felt like this time it was like super short and super quick because DC just feels like, well, we know. And we do know. We do. We really do. But it's where we start to get into the details of each world, like this is where we see the striking differences, but also with quite a bit of familiarity, because the childhood relationship that we see, it's much like what we know it to be between Bruce and Thomas Elliot, well before there was any Batman vs. Hush, and the two of them were super close, and at times seemingly like brothers. But in this case, instead of Thomas Elliot spending more time with Bruce's family, it's actually the other way around. And the way that it ends up being this way, like it's really messed up. Because in this case, in the Dark Multiverse, both families were actually close. And because it was like this early on, both families had went together to see the Mark of Zorro. And though Thomas's family had came as well, still only Bruce's parents were killed. But also with this difference in kinship, you then also have the case of the Elliot family who takes in Bruce instead of Alfred. And I think it's safe to assume that Thomas's dad is not an alcoholic in this universe. Like, it appears that Bruce is in good hands, but even with them taking him in, over the years they couldn't help younger Bruce, who over the course of time has slipped deeper and deeper into darkness and madness. But after this, we then jump forward some 20 plus years later into a very bright and grand Gotham City, which at this point is an independent city-state, which has its own presidency, so on and so forth. And it's quite a bit posh and Hollywood-like, at least from a bird's eye view, because there's this grand opening at the Omni Center and everybody who's anybody shows up, and it's being televised on Gotham Glitterati, but it's also the premiere opening of like the tallest building in Gotham, so it's a pretty big deal. But amongst those here you have Jason Todd, who's president of a defense contract company called Redline, and he's here with Donna Drake, but then also you have Attorney General Harvey Dent, and then representing one of the founding families of Gotham, Oswald Cobblepot. But the attention mostly goes to who arrives next, which is Senator Thomas Elliot and Talia al Ghul, head of the League of Assassins. And very early on it's made pretty clear that Thomas had got a seat of power through the resources of Talia al Ghul, but for whatever reasons he feels threatened by Jason Todd, like he's Mr. Steal Your Girl or something. And that's something that kind of lingers through the story a little bit, so just keep that in mind for later. But as soon as they arrive here, Thomas gets a message to where he has to leave immediately. And when he does, he tells Talia like, yo, don't be talking to Jason Todd. I don't like that dude. But when he leaves, he takes a chopper, and it's here where we get to take a look at the ground level, because there's a bunch of protesting and rioting in the streets, and the people are like holding signs saying Save Gotham from the Gotham Security Force, who are like the police force of this isolated city-state. But after this, we then see Thomas Elliot arrive at Arkham, and when he does, he's met by Dr. Crane, who's this reality's version of who we would know as Scarecrow. But as it turns out, Dr. Crane had called for Senator Elliot to fill him in on a number of incidents, with the last being the most significant. And the reason why Senator Elliot was called here first, it's in part because he's a majority owner of Arkham, but also with that, Senator Elliot, he has special arrangements with Dr. Kane pertaining to some of the patients, and whom some have been dying in their sleep, and one of which that Dr. Crane would describe as difficult to explain. But as they make their way in, you also have like the Mad Hatter, who's singing this song, Hush Little Babe, Lest You Call Down, the Bloody Bat of Gotham Town. And this gets the attention of Thomas Elliot. And so then when he asks Dr. Crane like, what is that song about? And he tells him it's a song that the Hatter had made up about Arkham's devil, who had stories that were brought about by Amadeus Arkham, the founder of Arkham Asylum, to whom in the main universe, his story kind of went like where he founded Arkham Asylum, went crazy, and died in his own institution. But as Dr. Crane describes, Arkham Devil is about the story of this bat demon that would pass through the walls of the asylum and kill the patients inside. And with all these patients dying in their sleep recently, there's been rumors that the Arkham Devil is the cause of it. And Senator Elliot, he asked Dr. Crane like, does this have anything to do with the hard to describe incident? And Crane was just like, nah, this something else. But it's then after this that we head over to the main reason that Dr. Crane had called for Thomas Elliot to show up, and that was because of the death of Bruce Wayne, who prior to this had been here for some years in a vegetative state, but as Dr. Crane would describe, he had died of asphyxiation when he rolled over in his sleep and couldn't get up. But with Elliot arriving here, Dr. Crane, he quickly goes through the formalities with Thomas identifying the body as next to kin, but then further stating and going through the arrangement that the two of them had, where Senator Elliot had allowed Dr. Crane to experiment with a number of his fear therapy procedures on Bruce Wayne while keeping him here. But also with the death of Bruce Wayne, this then means that Thomas Elliot inherits the fortune of Wayne Industries. And while they're here, like, Crane, he's kind of surprised because he would have thought that Elliot would have just speeded up the whole thing and just pulled the plug. But nonetheless, in a very unremorseful way, he expresses his gratitude with Elliot allowing him to experiment on Bruce. But after that, Elliot kind of scoffs at him, tells him to get out, so Dr. Crane leaves, but just before he does, he points out that Bruce is holding this ticket for the Mark of Zorro that hadn't been on him up until now. But after this, as Dr. Crane leaves, he passes this janitor who totally reminds me of you guys' comments on the conclusion of Three Jokers. And I think it's just crazy how this janitor mopping the floor also looks like the Joker. Maybe a coincidence, who knows. But nothing really happens here. Dr. Crane just gives him a hard time because the janitor's mopping while Crane is leaving. And the janitor's name is Jervis, by the way. But he just laughs sadistically and he tells Crane, I usually do this in the morning unless you'd rather me do this another time. But after that, boom, the lights go out. The doors lock and Dr. Crane just going out of his mind. Because it also takes a little bit for the emergency power to kick in. But when it does, the Mad Hatter starts to sing his creepy song for the Arkham Devil. And as soon as he does, your Hush Batman shows up, who's definitely making that top 10 list for best dressed Nightmare Batman, because the look is pretty sick. But when he shows up, that is the last that we see of Dr. Crane. Like, from there he's reported missing and that's it. But even still, the Mad Hatter, he's just watching and continuing to sing his songs. But then sometime later, we see Senator Elliot in his chopper making his way back to the Omni Center. And the pilot's talking to him, but he's not really listening because he's looking at this ticket that was in Bruce's hand and still trying to figure out like how it got there. But as soon as he looks up out the window, he sees this haunting figure for a quick second, and next thing you know, something's on the radar and a chopper is shot down. And when this happens, only the pilot is killed. Elliot survives the crash. But now that he's on the ground, he has all the angry and hostile people of Gotham to deal with. And amongst this group that he finds himself in front of here, there's Barbara Gordon, who's leading the Outsiders and a number of other protesters, and she's like, that's Thomas Elliot, let's get him. He's the corrupt official who murdered my father, Jim Gordon, the last good cop in Gotham. But before they can get to him, Dick Grayson shows up because he's been sent by the president's security, and president of Gotham that is, who at this time is Lincoln March. Yep, that other owl assassin. And when he gets here, like, he makes an entrance. Like, first he kills Cassandra Cain, then he destroys like this version of this Robin-like character. Like, he just beats the brakes off him and then he just takes off. Like, we're gonna have a rematch, and Dick Grayson like, yeah, sure. But with this Dick Grayson arriving here, he's also known as the Gray Sun, who's leader of the Gray Sons, who then are like your presidential secret service of Gotham City. But with him coming here, it wasn't just to save Thomas Elliot, but also to let him know that Attorney General Dent and Captain Flash are missing, and there were old newspaper clippings about the Wayne murders that were found in both of their homes. And because of that, he had came to Thomas Elliot to see if he knew anything about it that could help them figure this out. And so initially and naturally, this is blamed on the Outsiders as far as shooting down Senator Elliot's chopper and possibly staging these other kidnappings. And on the surface it makes sense because Barbara Gordon, she clearly has a vendetta, but when they take her into custody and she's interrogated by Dick, she generally knows more information than they do. And because he was taken down by a LexCorp RIM-72 Raptor, and there aren't any of those in North America except for Santa Prisca, and recently a suspicious delivery of lumber arrived in Santa Prisca to a certain someone who's not a builder but a defense contractor, which in this case was a one-to-one description of Jason Todd, who was also at the Omni Center earlier that night, much like the others who went missing. But Jason didn't go to any of the after parties, and because of that, Elliot assumed that it was him that he had seen on the rooftop. And as they walk with Jason through his warehouse, they tell him like, oh yeah, by the way, we scanned your place already, and we'd seen the LexCorp containers 2 floors below us. And with that said, they tried to arrest him, but Jason then just pushes a button on his earpiece and he commandeers their drones and points it at them. But when this happens, as Thomas had feared, he then finds out that Jason Todd is also working with the League of Assassins. And then to make it worse, Jason tells Dick, like, look, the Owls have had their time, the League is taking over, And as for you, Elliot, your girl's ready for a change of scenery. And then it's like, aha, you are Mr. Steal Your Girl. But just after this, a grenade comes crashing through the window, and initially I thought it was gonna be like a flash grenade, but there was like way more fire. And when it came through the window, it had separated Thomas, Jason, and Dick from the rest of the security that was there, but all these three can hear is like screaming and yelling and like bones crunching. And then over the flames it came the mysterious Arkham's devil. And when he shows up, you have like this moment where the Gray Son, or Dick Grayson, he tells Senator Elliot, like, get out of here, I'll take care of this guy. But when he does, first of all, like, Senator Elliot just takes off. He doesn't even say like, okay, or you want me to guys send you some help. He just jets out of there. And it leaves Dick and Jason to go up against them by themselves, and they already know it's not gonna go well. So just between themselves, they're kind of like, okay, we're not gonna tell anybody about this. Like, all right, cool. And in the case of Senator Thomas, it was like the last thing he heard was like these guys screaming, as he swiftly made his exit, of course. But just after this, we find that he made his way to Talia al Ghul. And in this conversation, he tells her that Bruce Wayne had died, and he believes that now that she's trying to kill him, to take everything that he has, plus everything he's inherited from the Wayne fortune. But Talia then tells him that she was able to kill her own father, and if she was able to do that, like, why would she try to sneak or hide about killing him? And after that, she tells him, like, whatever happened, we're surrounded by the League here, we're safe, relax. And he just gets snarky after that, because he's like, hey, tell that to Jason Todd. And from here, like, Talia, she doesn't deny her professional involvement with Jason Todd, because that part makes sense. He's an arms dealer and his resources are useful to the League of Assassins, more specifically this version, who have more of a military appearance. But in the middle of their conversation, Thomas just stops, because he then sees the book of the Mark of Zorro just sitting on the desk, and it immediately spooks him out because he knows that Arkham's devil has been in his home. And right after that, he grabs his gun, he goes over to Wayne Manor so that he can search around and try to find some sort of answers. And when he gets there, the place is just completely run down, windows broken, like it doesn't look like anyone's lived there for decades. But then he hears a voice speaking to him from the shadows, and it says, is there anything you want to tell me about the Wayne murders? And when he looks to see who it is, it's Dick, and he had knew that Thomas was here because he had been tracking him the whole time. But when Dick shows up here, he tells Thomas that President March had known that he would be a weak link, because the League of Assassins, they were trying to get the Wayne fortune so that after that they would then make their move for the president. And it's because of that President March had sent Dick here to sentence Thomas Elliot to death. But before Dick kills Thomas Elliot, these hands reach up through the ground and grab them both through the floor. And this is where it gets crazy, because initially Elliot lands where he appears to be alone until he finds himself in the dark under this spotlight, but next to Alfred Pennyworth, who's singing the Arkham's Devil song. And initially Thomas is like, wait, I know you, you're Arnold or Albert, Alfred, yeah, that's it. Because remember, when Bruce was taken in, Alfred was just kind of shoved in the background. But then it's here with the lights cut on, and he's in this huge room within the cave under Wayne Manor, and everybody who's gone missing, they're like inside of these little bird cages. And Thomas initially thinks that Alfred did all this, or at least he hopes at this point. But Alfred tells him, like, look, I'm just a servant of the Waynes. And it throws Thomas because all the Waynes are dead. And Alfred is just like, are they? And right there, Arkham's Knight just jumps out of nowhere, scaring the mess out of Thomas Elliot and nearly chasing him off a cliff. And it was kind of funny seeing him run off because he was like shooting back and not even looking where he was shooting. But before Thomas goes off the cliff, Arkham's Knight grabs his hand, like nearly clawing into it. But it's here where Arkham's Knight, he tells Thomas that he knows everything. And he just pulls him up off of the ledge and he tells him everything, like all his dark secrets that even start back from his childhood. And for starters, as a kid, Thomas Elliot had promised his family Driver like some insane payoff in order to kill his parents, but it went wrong and he killed Bruce's parents instead. And then after that, he had his own parents killed a few years later. But then after that, when he couldn't pay off the good cop who was on the case, he had him killed too, and that good cop was Jim Gordon. And soon after this, Thomas finally puts together that this is actually Bruce Wayne. But at this point, he can't understand like how he's still alive because he saw his dead body still on the table. But as it turns out, Bruce had some friends watching his back who helped him fake his death and break him out of Arkham. And as it turns out, that janitor, who was actually Jack Napier, to where there's your Joker reference, but he was the one that gave Bruce the drugs to seem like he was dead. But then on top of that, also the autopsy scars to fool Thomas. And Bruce had planned this after learning from Alfred how his parents had really died years ago. And it was after that when Bruce had went to Arkham and learned from a number of different inmates, like a collection of skills in order to become who he is now. like in the case of Amadeus Arkham, who taught him how to fake a worsening psychosis, Nick Manson, who taught him about disguises and lockpicking, Dolores Madigan, who taught him about unarmed combat, and then there was Sal Baruso, the mob assassin, who taught him how to kill and leave a message without leaving a trace of evidence. And then there was Casey Callahan, the escape artist who had broken out of prison over 200 times. And then finally there was Gideon Crow, who taught him the art of detection, surveillance, poison, and plenty other things that a serial killer would know. Which then made his whole time at Arkham seem like he was ill, but instead it was him dedicating his life to planning his revenge. But after this, Thomas Elliot had never seen the light of day again. Alfred Pennyworth had later inherited the Wayne fortune, and Talia al Ghul, who's obviously not with Thomas Elliot no more, she just was kind of like, oh well, and got with the president. But like, aside from that, like Arkham's devil, he had just collected all these people under Wayne Manor, to whom eventually he added Jason Todd to the collection. But it's kind of crazy because he has like his own version of Arkham in his Batcave, but he's not locking up the crazy, he's just locking up the corrupt. But he's pretty much keeping them there till they go crazy. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the Patreons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here, who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below to where you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again in the next one. Alright, later.